Hey everybody, it's Dan and welcome back to the Men Need to Be Heard show. A little different this week, I'm flying solo. Got an interesting topic though, and it's something that I've kind of been sitting on, to be honest with you, for a few weeks now. And I thought about having a guest on to discuss it, but I kind of wanted to share my thoughts on it. So I figured, why not, right? So what's the topic, you might ask? Well, the topic is, I hate to use the term. It's about simping. It's got a very negative connotation, and I don't mean it to be negative, although we're going to talk about that a little bit. But also, just in general, I'm using that as kind of a catch-all term, but in general, how a lot of guys don't know how to approach women, relationships, dating anymore. And I'll be the first to admit I'm not in the dating pool. I haven't been for a while. But I'm almost 60 years old, been there, done that, and I kind of seen what has changed over the last few decades. So that's really what we're going to be talking about with this. And, even if you're married or have walked away or whatever, this is still going to be pertinent to you because we're going to be talking about relationships between men and women. Now, with my podcast, as I've talked about in the past, my goal is to give information. Both good and bad to guys, right? I'm trying to help guys be happier, healthier, less stressed, and navigate their way through today's society. And let's face it, society is pretty much against men right now. So this kind of falls into that. And one of the things that I've observed a lot of, what really kind of triggered this, let me step back for a second. What really triggered this was about 2 months ago, I was talking with one of my fellow men's rights activists, who happens to be a woman. We were having a hell of a conversation, just in general, about things that we see on social media. And she brought up something that happens to her a lot. And what was funny is it happens to me also. So what we were talking about in general was some of the responses we get from people, and whether it's on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, I hear from people. I get a lot of direct messages to me. Sometimes they're looking for help. Sometimes they're looking to vent. Sometimes they just want to share something and, tidbit of information or whatever. And I welcome all of that. But along those lines, sometimes I get women who will reach out to me. And to be as polite as I can about it, they are not looking to, let's say, share information with me, but perhaps share something else. Now, it doesn't happen often, but occasionally it happens. And I was sharing that with this person, and she was chuckling, and she goes, "Oh, dude, you have no idea." And, it's happened to me, I don't know, 3-4 times probably over the last 6-8 months, something like that. It happens to her 3 or 4 times an hour is what she said. And it sparked a whole conversation about it because it's something that I then, after that conversation, reached out to some other of my female friends that speak out on social media, not just, by the way, about men's issues, but just in general, or they have accounts and all that. And it's almost universal. There was 1 or 2 who said they don't see a lot of that, but it's almost universally the rest of them, they get contacted all the time. Guys will send them DMs, and basically they're looking to get attention, all right? Again, I'm trying to be polite here. But sometimes it goes too far. And that's really where I want to kind of start off with. So the generic term you'll see used to address those type of guys and is simping, right? We've all heard the term. Probably most of us have used the term. I freely admit I've used it. It can be both a derogatory term and a non-derogatory term. But really, what is it? I guess that's the first question we should ask. So general definition of simping is, it came out to my knowledge a few years back in relation to gaming, guys like trying to get attention of female gamers. But really, it's like a slang term used to talk about a man or describe a man who, caters to or goes over the top to try and flatter a woman, basically to try and win her affection and attention. All right. And it's not uncommon, as I found out, for these guys to basically sacrifice their dignity and, in a matter of speaking, debase themselves. And that's something that I want to get into with this, because that's not healthy for anyone, but especially the guys doing it. And again, let me be clear here. I'm using the term simp, but I'm not trying to be insulting with it. So I know it's used that way, but there's really no other term that kind of gives it the level of attention that I'm looking for with this. All right. And what I have seen, I probably first heard of the term, well, it was back when the pandemic first started and we were all home. That's really the first exposure I got to it. I didn't really know what it was at that point. But it's gaining popularity. I'm seeing it used more and more by both men and women on social media platforms, all of them. There's no exceptions to that. And really, it's kind of morphed from being just that person that's trying to get the attention and being excessive with it, to really any man who basically tries to give attention to a woman, which I think is going too far, because saying to a woman, hey, you look nice today, is not simping, okay? I don't think. Some would say it is, to be fair. The feminists in particular will say that it is. She didn't ask for that. You are simping, and then they'll use other terms, but I don't want to get into that. But it's starting to morph more and more, and frankly, as I see it, it's becoming more derogatory. And, I've always been a guy that likes to help men and speak out about it. So, we're going to address that a little bit here. And again, I want it to be understood that the context is not to insult or hurt anyone. It's to help them. Okay. And look, I welcome comments on this. If you're going to comment, please keep that in mind. That's the perspective we're coming from here. All right. I don't want this to be attacking guys, and belittling them. If you want to make a comment and try and help them, great. Welcome it. Absolutely welcome it. But let's not be belittling and all that. That accomplishes nothing in this context, okay? Because the reality is, what causes it, and I am not a shrink, I don't pretend to be one, but I have some insight into how men think. I am one. And this is my opinion. I think what causes it primarily is a lack of self-confidence that many men have. Something, honestly, I've never struggled with. I was the guy back in the day. I first started dating in the late 70s, early 80s. I was fearless. Dating to me and going up and approaching a girl, with one exception, was never difficult for me. It was a numbers game, is the way I looked at it. It was, if that one said no, I'd move on to the next. Good, bad, or indifferent, that's how I was. So I never lacked for self-confidence. And people have asked me, how do you get that way? I don't know. I've always been a person that could do things like public speaking. I've spoken in front of crowds as much as 1,000 people, give or take. All right. Fearless about it. I actually love it. I call myself a stage whore. Doing things like this podcast, a lot of times guests that come on the podcast will tell me how nervous they are. And I understand that. It's not a knock on anybody, but I've never felt that way. I've done TV and radio for years, but even when the very first time I remember going on TV and on radio, fearless about it. for whatever reason, it doesn't bother me. I don't know if maybe some of it has to do with being a musician back in the day, also being in bands, playing in front of, and I'm by no means saying that, I'm a rock star or any of that, but, a couple of the bands I was in back in the 80s, we played before 3,000 to 5,000 people a couple times, opening for bigger acts. We were never going to be that big. We thought we were. But anyway, so I guess it's just who I am, right? And I recognize that I'm the exception. But I've talked with a lot of guys. I've talked with friends who are afraid to approach women and or even talk about public speaking or whatever. All right. One of the things I've done in the past is help people with their public speaking, but that's not part of this. So, when it comes to people, quotes, simping, again, not being derogatory here, I think a lot of it has to do with a lack of self-confidence. And I understand that. Again, I don't have it. Even now, if you watch this podcast, you can probably figure that out, or watch my social media. But I understand it. And, whether you consider it bad or good or somewhere in between, really depends on the context. It's subjective and dependent on the context, because as I said, a guy saying to someone, a woman he sees somewhere, hey, that dress looks really nice on you. That's not simping to me. Nor should it be considered what a lot of the feminists call it, which is attacking women. I mean, I've had that actually said to me, or the classic one guys talk about all the time is opening doors, right? Opening a door for a woman is not simping. It's simply being a decent human being. The other side of it is opening door for a woman is not hitting on her, is not, pushing the patriarchy or all that other crap that the feminists do. I frankly don't open doors as much as I used to, because I've heard it too many times and I have zero tolerance for it anymore. And the last woman that said something to me about me daring to open a door for her and she wasn't helpless and blah, blah, blah. She went on for about 20 seconds. I stepped in front of her, I shut the door, and I held it shut. Yeah, it was snarky. I freely admit it. And she kept going, blah, 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 and I just went like that, But again, it's the context that we're talking about with that. A lot of times what's considered simping, I feel, is nothing more than just being nice, being, genuinely making an expression of interest or admiration. You go up to a woman, let's say you're interested in a woman, you go up to her and you say, hey, my name is Dan. Your hair looks nice today. It's a conversation starter or whatever. I mean, that's probably a bad example. I don't think I've ever used that one, but I'm not talking about dropping lines either. But you say something nice. You're trying to start a conversation. Where it does, though, become a negative is when it becomes an obsession, I think, in some cases. Or where I really want to talk about as we go through this is where men debase themselves, self-debasing, if you will, where they their self-esteem is so low they feel they have to bring themselves even lower to get attention. And it leads to an unhealthy life, an unhealthy approach to life, an unhealthy approach to relationships. That's not good for guys, all right? It's not good for women either, all right? It's not good for anybody. It's something that I want to kind of talk about, and that's why I'm doing the show this way today, because I think we all can benefit by kind of first having an understanding about it, and then helping guys who maybe are doing it to see that it's not the best approach, and more often than not, it's almost universally, it's going to come across as a negative, right? You're going to any woman that as someone said to me, any woman that might be interested in you is going to be turned off by it, is what she said. And I could see that, right? You know, again, everything's individual. One of the things that I am, if nothing else, is I'm very libertarian. I believe that you should be able to make your own decisions, and whatever they are, whether, you know, you want to get back in my day, because I'm older, if a woman got a tattoo, she was thought of as now it's commonplace, right? But back then, I had no problem with it. Go ahead, get tattoos. I have tattoos. Who cares? So it's something as basic as that. Up till now, you know, if someone wants to get tattoos on their face, more power to them. If someone, you know, the big thing now is talking about people changing from male to female, female to male, more power to you. All I say is, as a libertarian, you do you, let me do me. Let me be me. Don't try and force your agenda, whatever it might be. All right? I don't care what you do, as long as it's not hurting me or hurting someone else specifically. I don't care what you do. And it's the same approach here, right? If you feel that that's your best way, fine. I don't have a problem with it. All right. But I do hope you listen if you're a guy that does that. And again, I'm not trying to call you out. I'm trying to help you here. Because unfortunately, as I said a little while ago, it is starting to happen more and more. I'm seeing it more and more. And I'm not talking just on social media. I'm talking in general. And I get it, right? We live in a very confusing time for men. And we're seeing the results of, honestly, 50 years of feminism, 50 years of men being derided, demeaned, put down, thought of as bumbling idiots, incapable of cooking food. And I had someone attack me on social media just yesterday, declaring that obviously I did not know how to take care of myself. I can't even make my own meals, which was laughable. I mean, I was dying. I don't know why they think they get me with that, but whatever. But, you know, as we kind of go through life, we start changing a little bit. And at what we're seeing with society now, and men in particular, is over the last 50 years, we've started to change, right? We as men are responding to the environment that's been created. And as we're human beings, we respond in different ways to it. So I always talk about going back to, again, I'm almost 60 years old, the Brady Bunch. If you go watch the reruns of that show, the boys are usually portrayed as complete idiots. Any competitions between the boys and the girls won every single time. You know, that's my first experience in the media. And you see it in commercials, even to this day, where, you know, dad's a bumbling idiot who can't do anything, and mom's a superhero. Just once, I'd like to see that flipped, where mom is portrayed a complete and utter moron, and dad comes in to save the day. You're never going to see it. It's just not going to happen. But this is what guys are exposed to, literally from birth. And I've talked about this before. You look at education now. And I did a couple of years as an IT director in a school district. I had to get out. I couldn't deal with it because the IT side of it was, well, that wasn't fun either, but that was relatively speaking, it was fairly easy compared to some other things I've done. But even then, and this is 12 years ago, I was seeing what they were doing to boys in classrooms. Basically, they were drugging them. Boys are going to sit in a chair all day long, 6-8 hours, whatever they're in school for, and you're just going to pay attention to the teacher up front writing on the whiteboard, and that's it. And that's not how boys learn, right? And it infuriated me because even it was not really my place to talk about it because I was IT, but again, as part of the administration, I did have some input into it. And I would see the other administrators get really upset about, what are you talking about? What do you mean we're not addressing boys' needs? no, 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 and they would get really, really upset about it. But again, it would be, the mentality would be that, there's something wrong with the boys, so we got to drug them. Now that was 12 years ago. Now it's gone even further, right? These boys, and I'm hearing horror stories of just a couple of weeks ago, I heard where a teacher, and forgive me, I don't remember where, had all the boys get up in the classroom and admit their guilt for the patriarchy. And we're talking 8 and 9-year-olds. And I know there's been other instances similar to that. Think about the effect that has on the impression, the effect, and the resulting lowering of self-esteem that would have on a boy at 8 or 9 years old. Besides being bombarded nonstop with negative images about being a boy in TV, books, magazines, although do boys even read magazines at this age? When I was 8 years old, I read, Highlights and a few others. I'm really showing my age. Comic books, that kind of stuff. But it's that anti-boy, anti-male belief has crept into everything. There is no man right now that is getting through a day without hearing multiple times there's something wrong with him, or he's to blame for society's problems. I'm generalizing, but I can tell you right now, if I were to sit down with a guy and ask a few questions, at some point they're going to go, oh yeah, that did happen to me, right? They don't realize it's happening in many cases. And that's part of the problem. That's how they end up with a low self-esteem, which leads to the simping, right? And I think that, the thing that needs to be recognized is that this has occurred. How do we fix it? Well, you're not going to fix it overnight. Let's be honest about it. All right. We need to first admit that it's a problem. And again, I'm talking about self-esteem here, specifically in terms of relationships, but this applies across everything. But keeping it somewhat on topic with relationships, what's happening is you're seeing a few things going on, I think. And again, these are my opinions, and I've done some research. I'm sure that people are going to come at me, you don't know what you're talking about, you've never researched. I have researched it, okay? You may not like what I'm saying, you might not like hearing what I'm saying if you're a guy, but I'm not just making this crap up, okay? As we have gotten older and as we've gone through life and we've gotten these negative self-esteem, negative self-images, however you want to phrase it, it does have an effect down to your very core. And it crosses all of your life. It affects everything in your life. But when it comes to relationships, I think more than ever we're seeing the effect it's having. Forgive me, I got to take a quick drink. Men don't know how to approach women anymore. And, a lot of the blame, to be blunt, is on women. They don't know what they want, yet they expect us to know what they want. Do we approach you? No. We're told, no, don't approach us. Then we see the other side of it. Why aren't you approaching us? We're told, don't treat us the way you did in the past, whatever that means. Or do treat us the way you did in the past, whatever that means. They never give specifics. It's weird. Don't approach women at all, you misogynist, blah, blah, blah. I mean, you hear that one all the time. Don't open doors. Don't do, all the don'ts. The other side of it, though, is you will see, well, why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you holding the door open anymore? And to be fair, more and more women are speaking out about it, both on social media and in life. I do spend time on social media. Obviously, I'm a creator. But I've had these conversations with many women, and they're as confused about it as we are as guys, right? They don't understand how it's gotten here. Now, let's be clear. We're not talking about stalking, all right? That's not, somebody who's doing that, absolutely. Get them out, all right? That's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about someone who's being disrespectful or any of that. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about the average guy approaching the average woman. All right. Um, and I've talked with many women in their 30s, 40s, and 50s over the last few months who've said to me, and they're single, they're like, I haven't had a guy even approach me in a year, 2 years, 3 years. And it's here's the catch now. It's starting to affect their self-esteem, right? Because, hey, no guy wants me. It's interesting to see that. And again, it kind of speaks to, this is going to be a topic on the podcast down the road, how men and women are more the same than they are different. Whether society doesn't want you to think that way, but we are, okay? Different topic, different time. But it's interesting to hear them say that. And then I would get into conversations with them about it, which is, well, why do you think they're not approaching you? And they'll say things like, I'm not attractive. They tend to, at least the people I talk to, and I'm generalizing and thinking that it's pretty much consistent across, but maybe it's not. It might be the people that I'm talking to, but they tend to put it in terms of physicality. The women do. I'm too heavy. I had one absolutely stunningly gorgeous girl. Beautiful. She was mid 30s, probably closer to 40. Absolutely stunningly beautiful. Really nice person too. She goes, guys don't approach me. Now, initially, I said, well, part of it is they're probably intimidated by you, right? Because back in my day, I was the guy that would go up to those girls. I was one of the few that had the guts. I mean, if there was a drop-dead gorgeous girl in a bar and I was a bouncer, I had no problem going up to her. Might get rejected, might not. Probably, I don't know. I was probably successful 30% of the time. I don't know. I'm pulling that out of my butt. But I didn't care, right? But other guys wouldn't go near them because they were intimidated by their beauty. I'm not worthy of it. And now you're hearing the women say the same things. That's what's interesting to me about it, is that what men were facing 30, 40, 50 years ago, and I'm sure women were at the time too, but women now are seeing it more and more, and the guys are kind of going the other way, right? It's just so fascinating to me to see that. But again, though, these women that I talk to, that men don't approach me. I don't know why. What's wrong with me? Does it sound familiar? Because it's the same thing guys say, right? It's the same thing that if you sit down and talk with a, quote, simp, right, you'll often hear them say, is that women don't want me, I'm not good enough, blah, blah, blah. Again, it kind of goes to we're more the same than we're different. But as these things have developed, right, so men aren't approaching women, and a lot of women are happy about that. Okay, more power to you. But they like to be very vocal about it. One of the things that I've been doing lately on my social medias is, especially on TikTok, because it's more prevalent on TikTok than anywhere else, is you'll see these women post basically hate-filled rants against men who might approach them or who want to date them or whatever. And all I simply say is, guys, go watch the video, read the comments in them, and learn from them, right? Is it all women? No. Although they tend to think that's what I'm saying. But it is becoming more and more prevalent. And I do that, again, to educate guys. Go watch these videos and realize this is what you might see out there. If you choose to get in a relationship with someone like that, that's your choice. Again, the libertarian in me. But do it with your eyes wide open. But what's interesting as we're seeing all this is that, and I guess this kind of speaks to what's happening in general, right? I think everyone has a little bit less self-confidence, a little less unsure of themselves. And I'm not talking mental issues or any of that. That's a whole other topic. I'm talking about just in general. Did the pandemic have something to do with it? And all that time we spent alone? Maybe. I don't know. Not my area of expertise. But seeing how things have developed and what's happened with dating, here's the net of it. Men are not approaching women. Women are still in the mindset, for the most part, they're not going to approach a guy for various reasons. I'm not going to go into that. So there's no interaction happening. There's no dating happening. Guys are walking away more and more every single day. And I get why they are. And in fact, I tell guys, think about what you want to do, and maybe you do need to walk away. Because, the common thread that I share with guys is, look, and I'm not trying to be negative towards dating or marriage. I actually wholeheartedly believe in both. I wholeheartedly believe we're meant to be together as couples. We are meant to be married. We are meant to support one another. Men have strengths, women have strengths. Men have weaknesses, women have weaknesses. What tends to happen is the men's strengths are the women's weaknesses, and the women's strengths are the men's weaknesses. So working together as a team, one, however you want to phrase it, benefits both. We've gone away from that. Now everybody's trying to do their own thing. And society, obviously, all you got to do is look around. Society's suffering for it. Some of that goes back to feminism. Some of that lays squarely at the foot of men to be blamed, all right? But no good is coming from it, and we're seeing this become a bigger and bigger issue. Again, men are walking away. I've seen the stat quoted, and I've done some research on it. Somewhere in the neighborhood of 50% of women in 10 years over, I think they kind of phrase it as childbearing age, are going to be single, and single well into their 30s, well into or past childbirthing age. I know you can have children in their 40s and all that, but you get what I mean, right? And what's interesting, seeing some of the research, and again, a lot of that research is they're coming at it from a perspective of, their social agenda gets into it. That's where I kind of want to go with it. So you got to kind of take it with a grain of salt. But when you really parse down into the data and look at what's actually being said, it's a problem. It's a serious problem. We don't approach each other. We don't interact with each other. We're becoming more polarized into two genders. And no, I don't want to hear about the 57 other genders. Let's stay on topic here, okay? I know I'm going to get comments. Stop. That's not what we're talking about here, okay? And as we progress, where is society going to end up, right? Is this beneficial to society to separate men and women? Now, I've brought this up before. I talk all the time to men about things like this, and I catch a lot of flack because I will say on social media, walk away. And when I say that, I'm not saying walk away from marriage. I'm saying walk away from the toxicity that's being pushed at you. When you have a group of women who will come on my various social medias and swarm, I call it, right? Get together to attack me or my followers who are commenting. What's the real benefit to that? They're not going to change anybody's mind any more than I'm going to change theirs, right? And what I will do sometimes is interact with them because, again, I'm not going to change their mind by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm trying to get guys to see that this is what's out there. And I don't want to come across as this is all women. It's not. My opinion, somewhat researched, somewhat educated, is it's probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 10% of women are like this. That's it. Maybe 15, maybe 20. I'll grant 20. Let's say 20. That means 80% of the women are not like this. They're the ones that are standing by going, what the hell happened, right? But that 20%, 10%, whatever you want to use, is very, very vocal. And they stick together. And we talked about this on the podcast a couple weeks back with Michelle, Reclaiming Your Voice too. We talked about this very thing, right? It's by design. They coordinate this. And really what it is to silence any talk about it, because their objective is to create that division between men and women. And yes, I know the striking similarity with the political side of things. And I tend to stay away from politics as much as I can on this. It's always going to creep in when it comes to talking about men's issues. But it's eerily similar if you notice, right? And again, what's the benefit to all that division? Who wins? The answer is no one wins. Society certainly doesn't win, and we're seeing society devolve rapidly. And ultimately, what's happening as the guys are walking away, because one, it's a huge risk to them. This is something that I think a lot of women don't understand, is that it's always a risk to a guy, one, to approach them. You could get rejected. Again, me, I never had a problem with it. A lot of guys, it would make or break them, right? I mean, I had friends that, I know of one that was terrified to approach a woman. There was one he was really interested in, and I remember chit-chatting with him and say, what he got to lose, and he finally, and I'm talking months and months, worked up the courage to approach her. And she shot him down instantly. And that's fine, right? She wasn't interested. She was very kind about it. She wasn't mean, but she shot him down, and he was devastated. And, you know, he really took it to heart. As opposed to going, well, I gave it my shot, and hey, I'll try another one somewhere, you know. So I get that part of it. It's a risk to guys to take that step, first of all. Then the next thing is, it's a risk to guys to go on that first date, because first of all, you take the risk to approach. She says yes. Now you got to take her on the first date. And again, make or break, right? If it's a good first date, she might see you again. If it's not so good, your odds are she's not going to see you again. And that's all changed even from 30, 40 years ago, right? The expectations on that used to be, hey, let's go to dinner and a movie. That was basically the standard first date when I was a teenager going up through into my, you know, when I first got married at 21. Up through that. Nowadays, I see these posts put up by women that are like, you need to plan an event, you need to spend hundreds of dollars. For what? My advice to guys is you go on a coffee date. That's it. Nothing more. If she's not interested in going on a coffee date with you, if it's not enough for her, odds are she is not the woman for you. Because she's not interested in you. She's interested in the experience, the money, what's going to be spent on her. That's not a quality woman, in my opinion. All right. A quality woman would go, sure, let's go on a coffee date. Let's get to know each other for an hour. If it works out, great. If it doesn't, it's an hour spent and, you know, nobody's out anything huge. What's wrong with that? But yet, the younger ones especially, but I'm seeing it even with people in my age group, they expect this big extravaganza. So there's a risk there for a guy. Let's say he gets past that one and starts, you know, building a relationship. Maybe they eventually move in together or get married. Think about the risk to a guy with that. Getting married is a huge risk to a guy with very little reward anymore. What is the reward to a guy to get married? Now, you'll hear two things will be thrown out when you throw that out, because I do it all the time with women. What's the benefit to marriage for a guy these days? The two things they'll throw out are he's going to get more sex, which is not true anymore. Back in the day it was, not anymore. And he's going to, how do I want to put this? He's going to, I don't know. I got to put it in a way that's not going to get me banned. Let me come back to it. Because what I want to say will get me in a lot of trouble. Sex is the big one. But, you know, let's phrase it this way. He'll have the benefit of her love and affection. Whatever that means, right? There is no benefit there. You can get that without getting married. You can get that from your dog, okay? Sex, not a big issue. The other thing they'll throw out there occasionally as well, it's proven fact that men who are married live longer. That was true decades ago. I haven't seen any new, really good research on that. And I do research that for some other things that I do. In fact, some of the research is showing the opposite because of the stress and all that. Is there a benefit to being married health-wise? Yeah, I would generally grant there is for both sexes. But, ultimately what they'll throw out, that's one of them. The benefit to men is they'll live longer. Okay, I'll give you that one. But the other one is they're going to get more love and affection. There's another way I want to put it, but I'm not going to go there. Family show. And the reality is when you assess that and you look at the potential risk, well, what's the risk? Well, I'm going to commit to this woman. We're going to buy a house. We're going to build a life. She gets bored, throws him out. And remember, 80% of women file divorces, and if they're college educated, it's 90%. She's going to get the house. She's going to get the car. If they had kids, we'll get to that in a second. She's going to win, right? And let me be clear, no one wins in divorce. But generally, she's going to, quotes, win. He's going to be living in a shithole apartment somewhere if he's lucky. I know of guys that ended up homeless or in their parents' basement or on the couch or their friends or whatever. He's going to lose everything. When you look at it as a man, and this is something women cannot fathom for some reason, they look at it the way women look at it, and they assign that feeling to men, that thought process. Men look at it totally different. It's a risk versus a reward assessment. That's how men approach almost everything in life. Almost everything. We think differently. Men and women think completely differently. And that needs to be acknowledged. All right. This trying to make us one being, homogenous society where we all think alike, the NPC, so to speak. It's never going to happen. I don't care how hard they try. All right. Men and women think differently. We're biologically programmed differently. So when men look at a situation, I'll use that term, a relationship, whatever, it's what's my risk and what's my potential reward. What's the reward? More sex? Even if you grant that, it's not that much more than you can get as a single, especially these days, right? Not that I do this stuff. I've never even been on these apps, but I know there's Tinder, and I think there's a couple other ones. I don't even know anymore because I have no interest in that. But, I've had friends say to me, it's, all I do is get on Tinder and keep swiping until I hit the jackpot. Okay. Not my thing, but hey. So, it's a little easier, if you will, than say back in my day where the only way you were going to do something like that basically was hang out in bars and wait till closing. And, pretty much if the girl was still there at closing, she was looking. I hate to say that, but it's true. But, when you're looking at the risk versus reward for guys, it's just not there anymore for relationships. It's just not there. And I don't see it changing anytime soon. And I think, so I'm trying to bring this all around to, what's going on with that. So we're seeing that men are not as involved with relationships or dating and all that, but they still want that. They want that connection. We're human beings after all. We're meant to be together. We're meant to be in a pack. We're not really that much different than dogs, right? A dog completely on its own is miserable in life. A human being completely on their own generally is miserable in life. All right, I know there's exceptions. I know. Stop with the bringing up the exception all the time. That's the other thing that just pisses me off. They'll find that one exception and make that the God's truth, as opposed to going, well, the other 99, yeah, maybe that's right. All right. Of course, there's exceptions to everything. Of course there is. But in general, a man or woman, either way, who is alone, has no companionship, is not going to be happy, right? There are exceptions. I grant that. And it's why you're seeing society be the way it is. People are miserable. And then they get on social media and they spread that misery, right? And again, you're starting to see guys responding to what they're seeing on social medias. So, I see it every day. I get on TikTok, I get on Instagram, not so much YouTube shorts, but they're there. Um, and you're just bombarded. And I know the algorithm comes into play, and what I do tends to create that issue. But I've had conversations with others that don't talk about men's issues, and they still see them. But they're bombarded, the guys are bombarded with this negativity towards men. And it's just that constant never ending. And again, it goes back to, how do men think now, right? All right. Risk versus reward. There's no reward. I'm going to walk away. That's happening. All right. Let's set that aside for now. Let's talk about the ones that don't want to walk away. They're in quite the quandary, right? Because if they approach women, there's a pretty darn good chance they're going to run into one that's going to just shred them. There's a pretty darn good chance they're going to run into one that's going to insult and demean them. You get where I'm going with it, right? They also, hopefully, find one that's pretty decent down the road. But again, risk versus reward. If it's, let's use that 20% number, if you're approaching 10 women, 8 of them have good interactions, but those 2, one screams at you for daring to even approach her, and the other just belittles and insults you like, who do you think you are to approach me, you bald? I hear that one all the time. What guy is going to take that risk? If I said to you, I'm going to have you jump off this bridge, there's an 80% chance you'll survive and you're going to get $1 million. There's a 20% chance you're going to be dead. Are there guys that will take that risk? Absolutely there are. Are there more guys that probably won't take that risk? Mm-hmm. And the reality is it's not 80-20. It's more like 50-50 at best, right? Divorces show. Speaking of marriages, 50% of all marriages end in divorce. So, again, risk versus reward. So the guys that want to have relationships, that do want to ask women and all that, they don't know how to do it. So they then try and figure it out with that umbrella of a negative self-esteem under it. So they'll, they see these videos, they see it in the media, that the best approach for them is probably to be very meek, because they don't want to come across as, that gorilla, if you will. The problem becomes, though, and I've talked with many women about this, and I've seen it online, is women hate that. There's exceptions, but the majority of women are extremely turned off with that guy who's just fawning at them and who just kowtows to their every whim. That's not the kind of guy they want to be in a relationship with. What's interesting to see is that over the last few years, you're starting to see women take advantage of it to make money. One of these days, I have to go on this OnlyFans. I'm using that. I've never been on it. I have my guy friends tell me, "Oh, dude, you got to go on it. It's hilarious." These women, I guess you can put videos, pictures. Again, I'm kind of naive about it. I freely admit it. But I've heard enough about it where I guess you pay a certain amount of money and girls will send you pictures and all that. Why would you do that? Why is a guy... See, the thing is, here's the thing. Guys will spend that money on them. They'll fawn all over them because they think that the girls are going to respond to them and give them attention. And honestly, they will. Not to date them, not to be in a relationship with them, but to extract more from them. More might be flattery. More might be money. I had a friend who was telling me about OnlyFans, and he's like, he liked to turn it into a game, I guess. So he was, on there, did whatever, and this girl was like trying to get him to send her like huge amounts of money. And I'm like, well, why would he goes, I'm just playing, but he says, I see a lot of guys fall into this trap, and they'll just literally spend their life savings in hopes they're going to meet this girl in real life, which they're never going to do. So you're seeing that. But in general, you're seeing where, these guys are so desperate to be with someone. And I don't even like the word desperate there. It's, you know what? That's a bad term. They want to be with someone. It might be desperation, but I don't think that's being fair. But they want that relationship, because here's the thing. Guys want relationships. This misnomer that women have that guys do not want to be in relationships couldn't be further from the truth. All right. They want to be in relationships. They want marriage. They want that steady single person. But again, this mythology that's been created for decades now that, men are dogs. They just want to jump in bed with every single woman they meet. That's all they care about. They have only one function, and their brain isn't located in their head. It's located elsewhere. Blah, 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 blah. That's women telling women those things instead of asking guys. All right. But these guys want that. And again, to go out into the real world, into society, and do something that would enable them to get it, like, approach a woman, is utterly terrifying for them. Because the odds are, in the past, they may have done it and gotten, again, rejected, demeaned, belittled, yelled at, all of that. So, again, once it happens to you a few times, now me, I brush it off. I laugh about it back in the day, especially. But I could absolutely see where a guy would go, nope, I'm done, right? Or I'm not going to try that anymore. But they still want the relationship. So then they do it online, and they do the quote unquote simping thing. And, it's interesting because, as I said in the very beginning, I talked with some of my fellow creators who happen to be female, and I actually put a video out asking for input. And I thank you to those of you that replied on it. This was a while ago. And I said, well, when you see that, how does it make you feel? Now, mind you, these are, in most cases, women who are very sympathetic towards men, are speaking out on men's issues, are not going to be the ones that are going to belittle a man. And they will say sometimes it's difficult. Generally speaking, they're fine with it to a point, right? If a guy, and I've done this, there's one creator, she's got purple hair. You probably know who I'm talking about now. She flipped her hair over to blue a couple of weeks back. And I said, geez, what happened to the purple? Love the blue. That was, that's not simping. Okay. That's not me fawning on her. It's just, hey, there's that level. And most of the women I spoke to, they're fine with that. Right. There's the ones who start saying in the comments, I want to marry you. I love you. Then it gets a little, all right, wait a minute, right? What's worse is when they start DMing it. That's when now you're getting a really personal thing, right? And that is scary, justifiably so, by the way. Guys, don't do that. If you're one of those ones that is DMing women saying, I love you, let's go out on a date, let's get married, whatever. Dude, you got zero chance. All right. You have 0.00001 chance. There's probably one woman out there that might say yes to it. I doubt it, but hey, all right. You immediately turn that woman off. You probably scared her, and it's not right. You need to stop doing it. Now, if there's someone you're interested in, does that mean you can't reach out and start a dialogue? Yes, you can. Just, don't lead with, oh, you're so beautiful. I just love your content. I think we would be really good couple together. Would you marry me? Yes, I've literally seen that. I mean, I'm paraphrasing, but I'm not that far off because someone sent me a screen snapshot. Guys, one, it's never, ever, ever, ever going to work. So stop doing it. When you get over the top, so to speak, one of two things is going to happen. One, the woman's going to, just reject it, right? And she might have been a perfect match for you, but you have no chance at that point. You also might run into the woman that's going to go, I can take him for everything he's got. Those are your two things that are going to happen. You're either going to get rejected or taken, right? I don't know of a third option. I have never heard of a guy doing that and ending up with the woman. Again, I'm not talking about reaching out going, hey, Jane, love your content. Just want to chit chat with you about it. Here, maybe check my content out and building it, right? I have conversations all day long with various women. I have no interest in dating any of them, and I never would, all right? But I can have conversations with them. That's how you start. And then if they or I or any guy, that's how you build a relationship, and then you approach it, right? Because, yeah, I get it. Online's different. You can't really do in person what you can, or online what you can in person. But this mindset that I'm going to just fawn over her and I'm going to send her DMs. And I've seen guys post videos. Really, guys, stop. Just stop. I'm calling you out there, okay? Because no good of it is going to come of it. And again, there are, unfortunately, women out there who are going to target men like that. At best will friend zone them. But these women know that they can just pay just enough attention to the guy to get him to send them money, whatever it might be. That's where I'm talking about with simping. And again, I'm not trying to be negative with it. It's basically saying you're trying to do something that is not going to work. So stop doing it. That's my goal, right? We want to treat women with respect. We want to treat them well. We want to be a positive in their life, not a negative. And again, a guy who's trying to just normally do that is not a simp. I hope you can see the difference between it. But in general, I think it's bad, right? Because even if you were by some sort of miracle to hit the lottery and get that woman to do a relationship with it, what are you building a relationship on? If you've had to debase yourself, lower your self-esteem to that level, and you're trying to build a relationship out of that, again, I'm not a shrink, but I don't see anything good coming from it, all right? Again, it's understandable. I get that part of it. I understand why it happens. I understand why some guys go that route. And what I'm trying to do is educate those guys, all right? The other side of it is, and you'll hear women talk about this, feminists especially, and they have a point here, is that you're actually demeaning the woman too, because all you're looking at is her looks. You don't know her. You might have some sort of idea of watching her videos, but basically you've now put her on a pedestal and you're validating her and interested in her simply because of how she looks on, your phone screen. Okay. You're not looking at her as a human being. There's some validity to that thought. I can't disagree with, much as I don't like agreeing with feminists, there's some validity to that. Okay. And again, nothing good is going to come from it. So, again, step back and let's look at our risk versus reward. Huge risk, no reward. Again, right? And again, I think a lot of the reason that happens is men are confused. They don't know what to do in today's society. They've got, half the women telling them, don't approach me, don't come near me, you misogynist, blah, blah, blah. The other half of the women are like, why won't you approach me? What's wrong with me? Am I not good enough for you? That kind of stuff. Well, we can't know which is which. And sometimes you think one is one way and they're actually the opposite. Guys are not going to take that risk, all right? But there are the guys, most guys aren't going to. Some guys will. And they're the ones that, back in the day, and this is going to sound bad, but it is what it is. We called it the guy didn't have game, right? He didn't have the ability to have that confidence to go up to a woman and just go for it. And, kind of like what I talk about I used to do. I had game back in the day. I'm not saying that to brag. It just was. But it's because I had a lot of self-confidence and obviously still do, right? Not arrogance, confidence. There are the ones that are arrogant too, all right? But because they don't have game, if you will, they don't have that confidence, they think this is the way to find that loving relationship or, frankly, to get laid. And it's just not going to work. Again, you want to be nice. You want to be respectful. You want to get to know the person, right? Before you start all this other stuff. I think that it's only going to continue on for a while. And I'm trying to say that, look, guys, if that's you, I understand you. And I'm not trying to belittle you in any way. But you need to kind of figure things out. You need to step back because it's not healthy for you. Set aside relationships, set aside women. Let's talk about it as guys, all right? Again, my goal with this whole channel that I have, with all the social media I do, is to help guys, all right? And sometimes you got to call you out on it, all right? So I'm not trying to be mean here. I'm trying to educate you and help you. If you fall into the quotes simp category, it's not going to benefit you. It's going to only hurt you. Because, as I said, the results that can come from it are not good. And the lengths that I've seen, and again, having those conversations with some of the women that I know, and some of the other creators that I know that experience this, is, they see it. A guy will approach him, the I love you and all that. Because they're not trying to be mean. They'll say something like, I don't know. I'm kind of just winging it. Thank you. I appreciate your thoughts. That's it. Well, okay. The guy's gotten a little reinforcement from his thing. He'll step it up. And she'll again, they're not trying to be mean. The lady might respond with, because I've seen some of these. Well, that's nice. Thank you. Blah, blah, blah. Right. But the guys keep going deeper and deeper and deeper. It becomes creepy. And yet, I know in some cases it is creeps. But in most cases, it's just a normal guy who doesn't know how to handle it, doesn't know how to respond, is getting some reinforcement to his attempts because he's getting a response, and goes too far with it, right? It becomes, for lack of a better term, an infatuation. And in some cases, maybe a really heavy one. And the negative effect it has on a guy is he becomes even more self-deprecating because he figures, okay, the more self-deprecating I am, the more attention I'm going to get back. And it ends up affecting their lives in a negative way. You're just reinforcing that negative behavior. And again, I don't think in almost all the cases the women are trying to do that. They're trying to be nice, as opposed to saying, dude, you got no chance, get away, which some women will, There's got to be some balance somewhere in there. I'm not the one to answer that. But if you spend your whole time trying to do nothing but shower the woman with affection, praise, compliments, whatever you want to call it, it may sound good and she may appreciate it at first, but after a while, it's going to become overwhelming to her and too much. Again, this is what women have told me. And then the other thing is then the men start becoming, for lack of a better term, infatuated with it. It becomes their being, their whole reason for existing in some cases. Again, and I'm not talking about creepy style. I'm just talking a general normal guy. because he wants that attention. He's getting it, so he'll go even more and more and more. So then I've seen guys and seen instances where they lose their friends. They stop doing things they enjoyed doing because they're trying to figure out, how do I get this woman to really, really become my mate? And it's just not going to happen. And eventually that bubble bursts for these guys. At least my experience and what I've seen. And that is never good. That's when, to the extreme, that's when unaliving can happen. All right. Again, we're not talking about, the being nice to a woman, or as they would put it, probably being romantic. We're not talking about that. We're talking about you don't know these people, these women, and you're fawning all over them. Not the way to do it, guy. All right, not the way to do it. And in the end, you're the one that's going to ultimately pay the price. And even if you manage to pull off a relationship out of it, it's not going to be a healthy one or a good one for you. So that's pretty much where I was going to go with it. Again, kind of went a little circular there, brought in a lot of different things. But I think that I'm hopeful. I've talked about this on the podcast before. I think that in time, this will settle. I don't know if it'll be in my lifetime. The pendulum has, for the first millions of years, we paired up, right? Men and women became a family, blah, 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 up until roughly the 1970s. So mankind survived and thrived up until the 1970s by men and women being together. I know there's pluses. I know I get it. But in general, right? So now we're going the exact opposite. That pendulum went from here all the way over to here. Now we're over here. And I think we still have to swing up a little bit. I think you're going to see more and more separation for the next probably 10 years. I'm guessing. I'm kind of swagging this. Probably in my lifetime. But I do think it'll kind of swing back at some point, because it has to. We are human beings. Sorry, I got to adjust my seat. We aren't meant to be alone. We aren't meant to be separated. Physiologically, emotionally, mentally, physically, whatever term you want to use, we are meant to be together. We are meant to, quotes, live in a pack, or a family, if you will. Right now, we're going our separate ways. And I get it, right? And guys in particular, we have to be careful right now. That's my whole thing I talk about with guys is, look, I get you want to be in a relationship. I understand that. Be careful. Look at it. Analyze it. Really figure out, is she the right one? Understand that she may be the right one now, but she may not be down the road. That's the reality. That's not being negative towards women. That's not being negative towards marriage. That's reality, right? And then make your assessment. As I said, I'm a big believer in marriage. I believe we are meant to be together, as I've just talked about. And I do think eventually it will swing back. What could swing it faster? Ladies, you got to be the ones to speak up. We guys can sit there and talk all we want. But you, in the, let's call it 80, 90% of the, quotes, good ones, have to start silencing the ones that are telling men to go away. You're the ones that are going to lose if you don't, because guys are going to walk away. It's risk versus reward for us. We are walking away. We're going to continue to walk away, and it's going to become a stampede of guys walking away. Already is, probably. You ladies have to speak up. And I've had this conversation with women, and they will tell you almost to a T that they won't speak up because they know what's going to happen if they do. They're going to get attacked. They're going to get called pick-me's. In some cases, not just online, they're going to get attacked in real life. I know of multiple instances where that's happened. They're going to get threatened by these women. Safety in numbers, ladies. The more of you that do it, and by the way, the more guys that speak up, the sooner things that change, right? If nothing else, one thing that I'm finding, I'm pretty vocal. I have no problem taking on the arrows and rocks and whatever else is thrown at me. And I have no problem speaking my mind. You can't cancel me. Many have tried. No one has, because I won't allow it. I'm not going to stop. I'm not going to shut up. But I'm the exception that can do it on its own. I wish I had more support. And I'm not knocking guys in any way for this, but one of the things I try and do is get guys to speak up. You know, when I'm talking about domestic violence, I tell guys they need to share their story. I talked about this on the lives I did the other day. When we're talking about relationships, you can go anywhere. Go listen at a restaurant. Go on TV. Go in social media. Women will talk about relationships badly over and over. They vocalize it everywhere. Guys, don't say a word. We internalize it. And I get it. We don't feel safe. Whole other conversation. It's one of the things I'm working on with my Patreon is I'm going to be having groups, a couple of different groups. I'm going to have a domestic violence group for guys that are going through it. I am a peer counselor. I've done it before. And I'm also going to have like a safe space for men where we can sit and talk. I'm not even going to let even the women I trust in there, not going to be even letting them in it. I want it to be guys only so that we can feel safe. We can share our stories. I'll share mine. I have shared mine. And help each other out and support one another. That's what we need to do. And then, so we need the women to speak up. We need the guys to speak up. Well, then we need to join together and speak up. And that's one of the things that I'm starting to feel really positive about. You know, those of us that speak out on men's issues, some of whom I've had on the podcast already. You know, Lindsay, Squirrely Girl 88, Michelle, Reclaiming Your Voice too. Sorry, I'm trying to remember their screen name. Have come on. They support guys. We are working together. We help each other out. We support one another because it's not just to help men, it's to help everyone. And I think in a lot of respects, that's what separates us from the women's rights groups, the feminists, is that they are only out to help themselves, to help women. They're not out to help everyone. And that does separate us from them. They don't see it that way. They'll never agree to that. But I don't know of any. There are, the radicals that are out there. I'm talking about normal guys, any guys or girls fighting for men's rights, speaking out about men's issues. I'm not talking the radicals. I'm talking the general guys, people like me, who want to take anything away from women. I believe in equality and have for 50 years. But equality is not gaining something at the expense of another, which is what it is right now. All right. It's working together communally to solve a problem. It's where men and women come together, we can achieve great things. I talk about this all the time. Apart, neither one of us is going to thrive. We might live, we might exist, but we're not going to thrive. So I'm going to leave it at that. I was planning on figuring to do about 45 minutes. I'm way over that. What do you think? I'm curious, maybe you think I'm full of shit. If you do, comment below, let me know. I had no problem with it. Like I said, you could throw all you want at me. It's not going to bother me. But I like hearing about it. I'm open to hearing diverse opinions on that. Maybe you agree with me. I want to hear about that too. Where do you see us going as a society? Where do you think relationships are going to end up? How do we help guys see that, again, I'm not trying to be derogatory with it, but simping is not healthy for them or the other people they're doing it with? How do we fix this problem where dating, relationships, marriage has become so negative? I'm curious. I would love to hear other ideas. I certainly don't have the answers. I'll be the first to tell you that. For right now, my only solution for guys is be careful, think about it, and yeah, you might need to walk away because the risk is simply too great. If you get married, it's better than 50-50 chance that you're going to lose everything. Your house, your car, your kids, your retirement, a portion of your income, blah, blah, blah. The risk is simply too high right now. And I understand that. I say to guys, look, know that risk, analyze it, and then make your decision. If you decide you're willing to take that risk, you do it. If you decide, nope, I need to walk away, then do it. I'll support you either way. But you do you. But do it with your eyes wide open. Don't put the blinders on, which so many guys have done. And my generation in particular, again, I'm almost 60, we were really bad at it. We had our blinders on, and it's why we're at where we're at now, because we didn't stand up and speak back in the day and say, no, this is not right. We're starting to. And kudos to the younger guys standing up and speaking. All right. Thank you for watching. Hey, if you've come this far, do me a favor, give me a like, subscribe to the channel. This is kind of an exception here. I'm just kind of doing a little rant today, but hopefully helping some people out. But I have guests lined up to come on. I've got people coming in from the domestic violence shelters for men. They're one of the only 2 in the country. I have reached out to some politicians, and I got one that's agreed to come on to talk about the political aspects of men's issues, specifically shared parenting and the domestic violence issue, trying to get shelters for men, trying to schedule that. Politicians are busy, especially this time of year. I've got several others kind of waiting in the wings that I'm going to hopefully get scheduled and bring them on. I've got some of my fellow creators that I'm bringing on. A lot to come, but occasionally I like to just do my thing, which is what today was. So if you enjoyed it, give me a like, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell so that when the podcasts go up, which is at 11 o'clock every Sunday, you see them. And again, I truly, truly appreciate all of you for watching. It does mean a lot to me, and having your support, knowing that you like what I'm doing, it does help me to keep going, because one thing men's rights guys who are fighting for men and speaking out of men's issues, we tend to feel alone a lot of times. All right. We tend to feel like we're going it alone. So your input from that can really help. All right. Till next time, you guys have an awesome day and an awesome week, and I'll see you again on Men Need to Be Heard.